Okay, welcome back to members of 121 Community Church in Grapevine, Texas, in our ongoing study in The Future of Theology, Essays to Honor Jürgen Moltmann, edited by Volf in 1996. We're going to take a look at essay number 2, it'll be pages 12 to 21. We're going to look at Christianity overcoming its own adolescence. Let's begin with Block 1, Christianity in the Third Millennium. Christianity is a young religion, about 2,000 years old, with a messianic spirit, calling Europe to reformation and bound to the fate of the modern world. Christians must become mature, working toward the service of humanity's survival, transitioning from faith in progress, which was an ideology, to balances of life, recovering a spirituality of creation, which Moltmann taught. Living in harmony with God, and right now Christianity is at a key juncture of its sojourn. This key juncture, it is just emerging from its puberty. It is just emerging from its puberty. Within its spiritual and intellectual estate, Europe's Christianity began the transition starting with the medieval period. In the United States, one attempted emergence was the false one of the Christian Right of 1994. So, how do we transition out of our spiritual and intellectual estate? America faces the loss of its innocence and its global responsibility. The false path would be to seek and to ask Christianity to restore the American dream, a Constantinian political Christianity. So the question is, will Christianity be able to move beyond adolescence? How does it move beyond adolescence? Adolescence is a time of turbulence, excitement, adventure, and discovery of power, but it can be dangerously reckless. Christianity in the 4th century compares with American Christianity in the 18th century, with a consciousness of power, where Christianity showed itself as a bright possibility for human progress. Showing that possibility for human progress. Christianity furnished an enthusiasm for European culture for more than 1,000 years, eventually leading to a reformation that perceived the world as God's creation and mankind as at the center of that creation, resulting in positing an ideology of progress and human potential. So what we really need to do, the real problem, says Hall, is we've got to transition out of an anthropocentric faith. The self must become a responsible self of community and cease being evangelically over-aggressive, being on guard against a nostalgia for adolescence as fundamentalist Christianity. We want to negate any falling back into a fundamentalist Christianity. So in Block 2, we look at the objective landscape, the church as tension between exclusivism and inclusivism. Just as fundamentalist Christianity is the wrong path, mainline liberalism is also another wrong path. It posits inclusivity, but at the same time excluding the dogmatic confessing church. However, the reconciliation of the triune God is not synonymous with this ideology of inclusivity. because liberalism posits reconciliation as a reality rather than as a gift of grace, merely as a construct of an ideology. Merely as a construct of an ideology. So we want to negate both fundamentalism and liberalism. Transitioning to a post-Constantinian maturity must include the core belief that Jesus is the concretization of the ultimate and the way to the concrete expanse of God's redeeming love. False agendas posit either right-wing dogma or left-wing absorption into a general spirituality. Christianity is threatened by a post-modern absorption into a very general spirituality. The Church's tension between conservative exclusivity and liberal inclusivity. So our landscape is Block 2, Note 3. Exclusivity or inclusivity. There needs to be a less doctrinal and more thoughtful expression of belief, a demand for theological depth. Only a thinking faith can overcome spiritual adolescence, says Hall. Okay, let's move on to Block 3. And as we move on to Block 3, let's take a look at the conclusions that Hall wants to draw. He says the church must be communal. There must be a genuine ecumenical movement. It must be tradition informed. The church must take up tradition as well. It must wrestle with remembrance, critically evaluate Christian tradition, and critically engage with the postmodern culture, and posit a teleology of the preservation of life, of the balance of life. And that would mean taking up Moltmann's theology of panentheism, God in all. Basically, that's what Hall is pointing to here, is that the remedy is to take up Moltmann's position of panentheism, which will reclaim that spirituality of all of creation. So in Block 1, we get the subjective problem of an anthropocentric faith, which must cease because it is falling back into a fundamentalist Christianity. That is the subjective problem. The objective landscape is the fact that the other extreme is liberalism and its inclusivity. So fundamentalist exclusivity and liberal inclusivity both threaten the church by both being adolescent. We have to evolve beyond that. We have to become theologically more thoughtful and posit a deeper theological depth. Again, by really negating right-wing dogma and left-wing absorption. If we do that, then we can take up a transition out of and toward a post-Constantinian maturity, which means taking up a spiritual perception of Moltmann's panentheism, making creation holistically viewed as spiritual. So we get a great second essay here that really does more or less outline the problem. Hall's task was to outline the problem. And he sees the church as situated in the postmodern era and threatened in the postmodern era. Genuinely threatened by possibly falling into an ideology of a some kind of just general spirituality, a left-wing absorption. That's the postmodern problem. It's where the French have reread Hegel and only posit a radically left-wing Hegel and a left-wing absorption, and Hall says that has to be guarded against if we're going to truly evolve out of our spiritual adolescence. We can't allow that postmodern absorption, left-wing absorption, to take hold. Equally, we cannot allow any nostalgia for a fundamentalism to take hold either. That becomes the exact problem for Hall, and I think he's right. The media gets flooded with the negative aspects of fundamentalism. We see that in the media whenever they want to portray Christianity as being a exclusive type faith. On the other side, our seminaries and our divinity schools can be imprinted and can fall prey to a left-wing absorption that must be guarded against. So I think Hall does outline the problem correctly. I think he does outline the problem correctly. I think he's got the subjective anthropocentric faith as a problem, and the objective tensioned landscape of being tugged between fundamentalist exclusivism and liberal inclusivism as the correct landscape. So this lesson more or less outlined the problem. We got a very definite outline of the problem. So the recall triad would be subjective anthropocentric faith and nostalgic fundamentalism must pass through negation, which will include negation of the objective landscape of fundamentalist exclusivism and liberal inclusivism, which must be negated as well. And then we can thoughtfully move forward into a post-Constantinian maturity, and that post-Constantinian maturity is one that Moltmann posited, which was a theology of hope and a kenotic Christology in crucified God, but basically a theology imprinted with eschatology, that is, an eschatology of critically engaging with the postmodern environment in a dialectical way that seeks to participate in the forward thrust of God's kingdom. So Hall gives us a great definition of the problem. The problem confronting the church that is fairly young. It's only 2,000 years old. It's still messianic in its nature. It must emerge in a positive, authentic way, negate subjective anthropocentric faith, negate objective landscape of fundamentalist inclusivity, exclusivity, or liberal inclusivity, to reach critical, thoughtful engagement with tradition and modernity. And then we will have an authentic post-Constantinian faith. So Hall gives us a great second essay. It was pages 12 to 21. And we will pick up next time in essay number 3. And in fact, it'll actually be a combination of 3 and 4. It's going to be, next lesson is going to take up pages 21 to 35 actually. So it's going to combine 2 authors together. We're going to do, the next lesson will be 2 essays combined together. Gonna wrap up pages 12 to 21. Pick up next time with essays 3 and 4.